Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I'm going to be creating another Monster High doll cake, and this time it's Gigi Grant. If you haven't already seen my tutorial for Draculaura or the Monster High skull logo, you can click on the pictures you see now to view them. These cakes are going to be part of a special Monster High playlist, so make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can see them as I release them. So the materials I have here today are my template, as well as another picture of Gigi Grant to guide me along when I'm doing her ponytail. I've got my long fondant roller as well as my short roller. I've got a offset spatula, palette knife, X-Acto blade, another sharp knife, a pair of scissors. I've also got two sets of luster dust. I've got an ice blue and a gold here, some fluffy brushes, a length of wire, a toothpick. I've also got some water and another brush. I've got my white chocolate ganache. I've got an 8-inch round cake, some light pink fondant, dark pink fondant, a little bit of orange, a tiny bit of white, 2 shades of green for her eyes, some black as well as another little bit of orange, and my board covered and ready to go. So the first thing we need to do is cut the cake, and I've got my template on top of the cake, and for the top part of the hair I'm just going to go up to that section and the rest is going to be on the board. So with my nice and vertical, I'm going to cut around the template and remove all of the excess cake. I've now cut around the top of her hairline, and I'm going to remove the bottom section of the template because I want to create a raised effect for her hair. So with my knife, again nice and straight and vertical, I'm going to cut in about 1 centimetre into the cake, and then coming from the very edge of the cake I'm just going to trim off the very top of my cake and stop at the top of the hairline. You can see here that I've only cut about 1 to 2 mils of the cake, so it's not very much at all, but it does give us a nice little bit of definition in between her face and her hairline. Next I'm going to cover my cake with the white chocolate ganache. I'm going to create a nice smooth layer over the top and sides of the cake and making sure I get into the groove of the hairline there. And once it's all covered, I'm going to put it in the fridge for about 15 minutes to set. To create an even smoother surface on the ganache, I've got some boiling hot water here, a paper towel and my offset spatula, and I've heated up the spatula in the water and just wiping off the excess. I'm going to rub the spatula over the top of the white chocolate ganache to smooth out any of the bumps. So now I'm going to create a few raised components such as the nose, the ears, the cheeks and the eyebrows. And to do this I'm going to use a little bit of fondant to create these features. So for her nose I've just rolled a ball which I'm going to place on top of the template, and 2 smaller balls for the sides of her nose. And you can see here by using the template as a guide you get a close shape and size of the feature. So for the cheeks I've created a little mound and I've smoothed off the edges. I've created a little snake for her eyebrows and 2 pointy little ears which we're going to save till the very end. Now I've got my template back on top of the cake, and with the back of my paintbrush I'm just going to score some gentle lines to use to help me position these pieces onto the cake. So once I've done that I'm just going to put the fondant pieces onto the cake and move on to rolling out my pink fondant for her face. Once I've rolled out my fondant to about 2 to 3 mils thick, just going to position the template onto the fondant, and with my X-Acto blade I'm going to cut around the top of her hairline and straight off to the 2 sides, as well as about 2 inches right below her face. Then gently rolling the fondant onto the roller, I'm going to lower it very carefully, lining up the top of her hairline, and drape the fondant over the cake. Now I'm just going to use my hands to gently lift up the fondant and let it fall into the grooves. And then gently I'm just going to use my fingers to smooth out the edges around the pieces of fondant underneath, smooth out the side of the cake, and then trim off all of the excess fondant. Now the thing that makes this cake really stand out are Gigi's eyes, so I'm just cutting the eyes out of the template, and once I've rolled out some white fondant to about 2 mils thick, I'm just going to place the template on top of the fondant and cut around it with my X-Acto blade. And then I'm going to use my face template on top of the cake as a guide on where to position the whites of the eyes. So using a little bit of water onto the cake, I'm going to adhere the white sections to the cake. Now I've cut down the templates of the eyes, and before I put away my white fondant I'm just going to roll out 2 little balls and cut out 2 long triangles which we're going to put on top of the eyes in a moment. So here I've got the first shade of green which I'm going to cut the larger section of her eye out and stick that onto the cake, and then again trim down the template and cut out the lighter green section of her eye and also stick that onto the cake. To make the black section of the eye, instead of cutting down the template further, I've just rolled a ball of black fondant in between my fingers and flattened it out on the template before putting it on the face. And then finally I've popped on the white highlights of her eyes. Now to make the eyelashes, I've got another copy of my template which I'm cutting up around the eye and right down to the very tip of each eyelash. So I've got a bit of extra paper there, but what I'm going to do is cut around the very edge of this template, and you can see once I remove the template we're left with some nice broad pieces of fondant in the shape of the eyelash and ready to cut out some long eyelashes. So now with my X-Acto blade I'm just going to make some cuts into the fondant and remove the sections in between each eyelash to create her beautiful long curly eyelashes. Once this is done, I'm just going to rub some of my water on the top and bottom of her eyes and then carefully position the eyelashes in place. When I'm doing this, I'm careful to support each eyelash with either my finger or the back of my paintbrush, and then I'm just going to gently curl each eyelash and repeat the same process for the other eye. To add a last little bit of definition to her eye, I'm just going to use my black edible marker to go around the outer green sections of her eyes. Now one of the fun parts of the cake is of course adding the eyeshadow for Gigi, and with the ice blue luster dust I've got here and my fluffy brush I'm just going to start building up the shade of blue. So I'm going to work from the very outer edge of her eye and taper it down into the inner corner of her eye, and of course repeat the process for her other eye as well. Now with the gold luster dust I'm just going to fill in the region from the blue section of eyeshadow right to the top of her brow line. Now to create Gigi's freckles, which are a very light goldish type of colour, I'm just taking here, you can see, the end of my toothpick and dipping it into the gold luster dust and then into the corner of my water in my dish. I'm just going to stir this around and then with the very tip of my toothpick I'm going to dip it in and then press gently on the cake to achieve her freckles. Now to create Gigi's lips, I've got some dark pink fondant here, which I've rolled into a little cylinder, and I'm just using my fingers to taper out the edges of the lips. And I'm just going to use the template again, of course, as a guide to get the correct size. For the top lip, I've got a little ball, which I'm then going to use my little finger to roll an indentation into the center, and again taper out the sides of her lips. Once I've got the correct shape and size and I'm happy with it, I'm just going to wet the cake with a little bit of water and stick the lips onto the face. Now moving on to Gigi's eyebrows, I've got some orange fondant here which I've rolled into a long sausage and tapered on both ends. Again, I'm using the template to achieve the correct shape. I'm just going to flatten it a little bit. Once I've got both my eyebrows, I'm going to dust them nicely with the gold luster dust because her eyebrows aren't orange or brown, they're a nice gold shade. Once I've done this, I'm going to stick them on top of the ridge of the cake. Moving on to her hair now, I've rolled out my dark pink fondant and I'm going to use the top part of the template to cut around with my X-Acto blade along the hairline, and then I'm going to gently pick up the fondant and lower it onto the cake, lining up the hairline with the top of her face. I'm just going to make sure that the sides of the fondant is smooth and trim off the excess. With the pointy end of my toothpick, I'm going to lightly drag it across the fondant to create the hairlines for Gigi. At this point, I'm just going to transfer my cake onto the cake board. With a little bit of water on my paintbrush, I'm going to wet the sides of her head and attach her ears. To create her hair, I've rolled out a long sausage of the pink fondant and I'm going to roll it into a series of balls. I'm going to make 3 of them for the main part of her ponytail and a little cone for the last section. I'm just going to position them carefully here for the moment until I get the right shape of the ponytail. Once I've done that, I'm going to remove these so that I can attach the orange streak to her hair. So to do this, I've just rolled out a piece of orange fondant, cut it into a bit of a rectangle, and I'm just going to gently attach it to one side of the ponytail and then smooth the fondant so it's a nice seamless join. We only need to do this for 3 bottom sections of the ponytail as the top little bun part doesn't have any orange on it. And then using some wire to attach one ball to the other and resting it on the board, we're creating her ponytail. You can position it in any shape you like. And finally, to create her elastics, I've just cut out 4 little snakes and attached them in between each joint of the ponytail. and here she is, Gigi Grant. Guys, if you enjoyed my tutorial, don't forget to give it a like and share it with your friends. Gigi is part of my Monster High playlist, so leave me a comment below of which Monster High doll you'd like me to create next. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more creative cake tutorials, and as always, thanks for watching.